You going to school to become a nurse, I thought you would want your business. I love it, I think that it's different.
Oh, we're being rude? Awesome, cool. My fucking turn.
I tried to pay, he begged me to stay. Babe, I'm not staying, I just wanna play. In the party, you just wanna romp. I don't know, Ruby. Maybe it's because I was born with the male anatomy. Because that's what being trans is. Smart one.
Oh, hey, it's the hyper-independent queer person who doesn't know how to accept actual affection because they're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. So what's going on with you today?
Just because trans women can't get pregnant doesn't mean you shouldn't try to get them pregnant.
I have this personality, and it's fucked up, but it's me.
Then they can't consent when you drag them to church either.
Talking to cis people has never been harder than it is right now because you'll talk to them and they won't know that there are 420 laws targeting the trans community right now. And you'll just be like, that's consuming my life.
My mom thought that my wife was forcibly feminizing me, that anime was part of that to forcibly feminize me, and that, you know, the woke left have won and they're putting the chemicals in the water and they're forcing us all to be gay now. But also look at my pets, they're so cute.
If you show me a room full of drag queens and then you show me a room full of like cis heterosexual middle-aged men and you say, hey, which room would you feel most comfortable with your 3-year-old daughter being alone in? I'm gonna choose the drag queens every single time.
No question.
Every single time.
Every time.
Are you
Hey, your students kept talking about the school shooting in the US too? Yeah. Do you think the amount of American school shootings on the news will just get to a point where we have to start doing active shooter drills in this country to make the kids feel safe? No, that would be unnecessary trauma. Why do American children do them then? Because for American children, it's necessary trauma.
Dear everyone, you fuck, you suck. I've had enough. I don't care. My mind's made up. Everything's fucked. Dear everyone, dear everyone.
So you mean to tell me that our elected officials are so dense that they've forgotten an entire portion of the trans community exists, i.e. trans men? Many of us have had phalloplasty, motodiaplasty, and therefore have penises, but under these bills would be required to use a women's restroom because they state that you have to use a restroom that aligns with the sex chromosomes that you have and the genitals that were assigned to you at birth. They're not considering any of us that have penises. Meanwhile, they're claiming the reason that they're doing this is to protect women and children from trans women who have penises. Doesn't quite make sense, does it?
Around and find out.
My legal name is Greg Gay. I was bullied. One day at lunch, I had my head shoved in the urinal. It busted my lip. I had laid on the ground in a fetal position as the kids kicked me. Well, I went home and I got the 45 out of my father's drawer and put it in my mouth. I had nobody in the school system to help me. Lance, you were the one that shoved my head in the urinal.
Mr.
Thank you.
I will resign and retire as superintendent of KDISD.
If you still think transgender people are unnatural, you're an idiot. Here's why. Trans people have been around since the beginning of humanity, and a lot of times they were gods. Figurines from the late Stone and Bronze Ages were found that had both boobies and wieners. In ancient Egypt, a lot of gods and pharaohs were third gender. As a matter of fact, the first god ever, Atum, had both male and female parts. A Nile god, Hapi, was intersex and also symbolized fertility. Woman king Hatshepsut wore a beard and dressed like a dude, and also she was a king. In ancient Greece, Hippocrates wrote about non-binary people. He said they were shamans and priests and they could predict the future. And in the Wild West, there were tons of sexy trans men. This dude was so hot that 3 women unalived themselves over him, and to be honest, like, I get it. I get it.
To anyone with facial hair dysphoria, if you ever ran out of your house without shaving, here's a little tip. Hi, Bubby! First thing you want to do is make your way on over to Target. Target! Hi, Bubby, round 2, Target! Now I'm sad because I think my face looks like a boy. My partner says no, but I think it does. Look at this old-ass donut. What am I doing with my life? Alright, let's go shave this face. You. Like a white bitch, my partner's got to go to the bathroom in Target, and then you're going to make your way on over to the shaving aisle. You're going to find the flawless hair remover. You can pick whichever one you want. Now, this works on your face whether it's clean, dirty, or anything else. My face right now is completely unclean. See, look at how nice it looks, and no bumps, no nothing. It'll last you over a year.
This is like why it's so disingenuous to talk about puberty blockers as being like really dangerous for kids. It's like, who do you think this was invented for?
Yeah.
It was invented for cis children with precocious puberty, which is like early onset puberty, people who are like maybe going through puberty at like 7, 8 years old.
Yeah, like
or
girls
something
getting
like
their period in like 2nd grade.
And so the idea is to just like hit pause on their puberty so that they can kind of go into it more with their age cohort, right? It's like, oh, well, is it reversible? It's like, well, if you stop, I mean, is it reversible for cis kids? Like, you just stop taking it.
I know more cis men on testosterone than I do fellow trans masculine people, whatever, on testosterone.
Well, because the testosterone was invented for cis people.
Yeah.
I mean, and same with estrogen.
If they're religious and they believe homosexuality is a sin, that's not bigoted.
Wait, yes, yes, it is. That is.
Religion is bigoted? Religious people are bigoted?
No. Religious beliefs that homosexuality is a sin is absolutely bigoted.
So how, like, all Catholics are bigoted?
If you believe that homosexuality is a sin, that belief is bigoted.
So people who believe in the Bible, they're all bigoted? That's silly. I mean, listen, there are people who believe that, I mean, a lot of the population is religious and holds, I personally don't.
And who's the least accepting of gay people? It's the white evangelicals.
But
U.S. Muslims,
U.S.
Muslims are more accepting of gay people in this country.
That's how religious people feel about homosexuality.
And that's wrong. That's incorrect.
Well, it's not up to you to judge that, though.
Wait.
It's not up to you to judge that.
So how are they determining that it's wrong?
Listen, it's not up to you to define for them how they feel about behavior. It's not up to them to define for you. But
facts don't care. Wait, facts don't care about your feelings.
But it's not. But
So this is still water? And I ordered sparkling mineral water with no bubbles. I see. So you understand why I'm furious, right? I mean, this could be tap water. What if I drank tap water? It would have been a catastrophe. A catastrophe at best. You know, I was so furious I had to have Samuel hold my butter knife. Say the word, sir. The word for what? Oh, it doesn't matter. We have a secret code no one can break. Anyway, look, the point is I just don't want to go Super Saiyan on this place before enjoying my plate of unpasteurized butter. Do you understand? Absolutely. I'll tell you what. I'm just going to go and I'll get you new water and I'll kill the servant who gave it to you, okay? I mean, if it wouldn't be too much to ask, I really appreciate it. Daniel, Grandmama wants to know where her blue ballet shoes are. Slay. Samuel, Operation Kill Those 2 Women. Yes, my lord. What does it mean?
I'm living in the beautiful state of Texas, and I am a trans person. And what's happening in this state, it's not normal. This isn't normal. There have been 140 anti-LGBTQ bills in one session, and that's 100 more than in the year of 2021. This video isn't about the bills or talking about the bills. I'm happy to talk about them at another time if you're interested. This video is about 2 things. First and foremost, trans and non-binary people have always existed. In fact, we've existed well before the country of America has, and the only reason that our existence is politicized is because of colonization, white supremacy, the patriarchy, misogyny. But we're not going anywhere. And lastly, rest is resistance. You don't have to do all the things. You don't have to show up. You don't have to be screaming the loudest. Rest, take care of yourself, because waking up to take another breath, it's enough. It's enough.
My favorite thing that conservatives say about trans women is that when they call hormone replacement therapy chemical castration.
Ooh.
The transgenders are doing chemical castration. Like, bro, we are also doing regular castration. I just can't afford that. Oh no, the hormones I'm taking are gonna make me sterile. I want to cut my off. I am very excited for bottom surgery, not so much because I'm looking forward to having sex with a vagina, and more because I'm looking forward to being able to use my butthole like a special little treat the way cis girls do. Baby, we're doing something different tonight. I am never going to have to buy a birthday present ever again!
The day I came out to my wife, I was reading Our Trans Timelines, which is a subreddit that has a lot of, people's transitioning journey before and after. And I just started crying. I just kind of broke and I got really sad and I was full of regret and jealousy. And my fiance asked me what was up. I told her that I was trans and I needed to do something about it. But I wanted to tell her before we actually got married because I didn't want to, I knew this was going to come back. This feeling constantly came back and I didn't want to do it after we have signed the papers, and it makes it a lot harder if she wanted to leave, which was a really big fear of mine. And kind of from that point forward, I just gave her a lot of time and space because it was a shock. We had been together for like 7 years. And after sleeping on it, she said she's going to make it work. And then we got married.
A few months ago, I walked into my classroom before school like I always do, but this time there was a cop there waiting for me. He was there because a serious threat had been made against my life and the lives of my students. Someone, in an anonymous email, had made it very clear that they were both willing and able to hurt me while I was teaching. It's something I still don't quite know how to talk about, but I think that we have to. These threats happen because of books. More specifically, these threats happen because of a fear of books. It's a fear that we've all seen growing, and it's manifesting in unthinkably ugly ways. It's meant to ignite the worst parts of us, in the same way that many queer teachers are getting used to hearing ourselves called groomers. But we can't let it distract from what we believe. And what I believe is this: that every student has the right to read and to see themselves represented and celebrated in literature. And that banning books, clearing out libraries, and threatening to hurt teachers does not make fewer queer kids. It scares the ones that we have into silence. So now, it's Read Across America season, and it was founded by the National Education Association in 1998 because they understood then what's still true now. Reading books that challenge us to understand ourselves and each other can only serve to close the kind of gap that inspires someone to hate so hard they only see room for violence. You can text BAND to 48744 for a recommendation for a banned book of your very own, and we can keep asking the same question Ray Bradbury asked in his classic banned book. Do you read any of the books that you burn?
As a child, I was groomed by cisgender heterosexualism. For 12 years, I was programmed at a religious institution for 5 days a week, where a man in a pastor costume would read us stories, spreading the ideology of the cis-hetero cult. He was later arrested for engaging in inappropriate behavior with one of my female classmates. The cis-hetero lifestyle was made trendy through entertainment propaganda. In 2 films a year, I was exposed to a man and a woman showing affection on screen for 3 seconds. If family dinners at Hooters wasn't enough, when my assigned male puberty began, the adult men in my family curiously joked about my budding sexuality. They advised me against knocking her up too early. Due to my age, I was naive to the reference, however socially awarded by the men for entertaining their behavior. Demonic cis-heteroism is a personal matter that has no place in our education system. This mental illness is grooming the minds of our impressionable youth, stripping them of who they truly are. In order to protect the kids, we must eradicate cisgender heterosexualism from public life entirely.
So a while back, I had a falling out with my mom because I'm trans and non-binary, and she just said that Korean people don't understand that. They don't agree with, gay people at all, or queer people, trans people, and she wouldn't. So we stopped talking, right? It became a big sticking point. Then last week, my mom called my wife out of the blue and said, I'm sorry, and I want to try again, and I want to work on this. So my wife told my mom my new name and my pronouns. And she was like, sure, come over for food, right? We're going to work on it. So today we showed up to have lunch with them, just because lunch is a little easier to deal with. And lo and behold, my uncles from Korea were there. Now, this worried me because, I'm wearing makeup. I'm wearing, I'm not binding. I'm wearing a bra. And I was kind of concerned how this could have gone. The first thing they did, my uncles, was said, "Hi, Noel." It's super nice.
You know I'm a TERF, right? Trans-eccentric radical feminist.
Are you a TERF?
I'm a TERF.
Wow.
Would you like me to move somewhere else? I will.
No, actually, you should tell me about being a TERF.
You're a boy, right? Don't fuck with me, because honestly, I did hard.
I'd like to see you try.
Well then, don't judge me for being a TERF. I get to be who I want to be, you get to be who you want to be, right? If that's what you want, to be who you want to be, then I get to be who I want to be.
Which is?
I'm not a witch.
You're not a witch.
You know what? Take your stupid dog, eat your fucking food, and get the fuck out of my life, okay?
This is a first.
Because otherwise I have to label you a white racist.
I see.
For a 70-year-old minority woman, you're a racist. You want your rights, I want mine too.
Excuse me. Could you grab the manager, please?
I'm so terribly sorry. I'll definitely be escalating about trying to get information. I do apologize about that treatment.
When your state just passed a drag ban, so you write a country song called Drag Queen.
He's teacher of the year and royalty as well. Cause every now and then Michael becomes Michelle. A little red wine to wind down his day with a lot of eyeshadow, but he never throws shade. He reaps what he sows and sews his own dresses. The wig glue of the family, always cleaning up messes. Puts on a face in one hell of a show, and everybody around here knows she's a drag queen, but she ain't no drag. Lace up front with a pony in the back. People try and knock her down all the time, but in high heels she's still 6'5". She wouldn't hurt a solar killer fly, but she murders on the stage every Saturday night. The kind of woman a lot of men wish they could be. Ain't no dragging down a drag queen.
Hello, my name is Zip. I am 10 years old. I use they, them pronouns, and I am transgender non-binary. At what point do I go from being someone you protect to someone who is a threat? Not based on my heart or any of my actions, but just based on my genitalia and your ignorant ideas of what you think who I am means. I deserve to age without fear that the bathroom and change space that allows me to feel safe and at peace will be taken from me. I deserve to become an adult that has freedom to use a change room I need. I deserve this right now and for my future. I urge council to allow all transgender people access the bathrooms and change rooms they need. Because when trans adults thrive, trans kids survive.
On today's episode of What the Actual Fuck, a church calling for the of all Jewish people and LGBT people. So yeah, trigger warning for this video.
Let me tell you something. Someone's going to die. You know, I don't think you realize we are in a crash course. Someone is going to die. Is it going to be Christians or is it going to be Fascists and Jews? Because there is not an option where we both just coexist.
It somehow gets worse.
You have to get them to realize God hates people. You have to get them to realize that the fags and the Jews are of the devil. And if we want to have true righteousness and we want to love God in this country, we have to eliminate these.
You know, he's only saying the quiet part out loud because that congregation is full of people. And there's a lot of churches that don't get on a podium and say that out loud, but they're thinking it and their congregation believes it.
There are hate crime laws in this country. That is Shield of Faith Baptist Church. It's always the Baptists. I don't know, could calling for genocide affect their tax status? But even just like putting aside trying to get the church in trouble for a minute, you know, like I said, what he says, that's a shared perspective. And the scary thing about saying it out loud like this guy is doing is that it encourages violence. So as a Jewish woman and a lesbian, yeah, I'm a little concerned. And you know what? This is why I call Christian nationalists Nazis.
Hi, so I never make videos like this, but I made a list of things that are happening right now in America that I'm really concerned about, and you should be concerned about too. Number 1, the Willow Project got approved, which will release 9.2 million metric tons of carbon pollution into the air per year. Number 2, the Supreme Court might overturn the Indian Child Welfare Act, which would allow Native children to be taken away from their parents. Number 3, South Carolina and Texas are calling for executions as a punishment for abortion. Number 4, Tennessee passed a bill gutting marriage equality for same-sex, interfaith, and interracial relationships. Number 5, Florida has introduced a bill codifying gender-affirming healthcare as abuse and allowing trans children to be removed from their parents. Number 6, Tennessee banned drag and gender-affirming healthcare for minors. Number 7, Mississippi brought back Jim Crow laws, which allow segregation of all white towns, police forces, and government. Number 8, Arkansas passed laws to make child labor easier. Number 9, a Tennessee representative called for lynchings to be brought back. Number 10, representatives from several states are calling for transgenocide. We are in stage 7 of genocide. Number 11, anti-Semitic hate crimes are on the rise. Number 12, Cop City in Atlanta exists. And number 13, books are being mass banned in schools, and the government is trying to control education. So we're living in a fascist regime, and I don't know what to do about it at this point.
With all the controversy surrounding children and drag queens these days, I thought I would go undercover and take our girls to a drag show and see what kind of horrible trauma they endure. So obviously I had to dress the part and go incognito. So I basically wore all this sparkly stuff, even my ears to match. I brought some dollar bills to throw their way. I thought that these people were protesting, and I was like, yes, get it. But they weren't actually. If you want to get mad, this is the restaurant that we went to. It's in Oakville on Kerr Street. We met a friend there who was going to serve as an ally. We made sure to dress the girls up to match the part because they had to really fit in as well. I had to have a drink to be able to get through it because honestly, I wasn't even sure that I was going to be able to pull it off. Anyway, the first queen came out, and how dare she look like that? Like, I mean, if I were to wear that outfit, it would definitely look good, but definitely not on her. Anyway, so the food was good, at least, because the show was kind of whack. I mean, look at this. Look at the moves. Look at everything. We had the girls give some tips because obviously we had to immerse them in the whole experience so we could document the trauma afterward. The queens even brought them up to do like a special little dance competition with another little girl that was there, that poor little girl. And how dare they put sparkles on the girls, making them feel all sparkly and shiny and part of the show. Just not cool. So here they are getting ready for their dance competition. They did a dance to Baby Shark. Baby Shark is so like last year. And they just, I mean, they danced around, but they will never get over this later. They'll carry this trauma with them their entire lives. They're the queen dancing around in a circle with them, giving them hugs, and even stealing flowers from our children. I mean, you can tell they hated it, so we'll definitely try church next Sunday instead.
You asked, I deliver. Here is part 2 of how cisgender people pursue gender-affirming care more often than trans people do. Somebody, or maybe a couple of you, mentioned that the examples I used in the last video were mostly pertaining to cis women, and so these are going to be pertaining to cis men. Viagra. This is my favorite example because you can't tell me that the use of this is not gender affirming to you, and it is pursued in much greater numbers by cisgender men than it is by trans people, though some of us do pursue it because the way that we take hormones may affect the production of, you know, sexual things. Same with hormone therapy, because we all know a man who's taking steroids at the gym, and that's not a judgment call, it's just pointing out that he's taking testosterone, and so are trans men. So why is it a problem when they do it, but not when he does it? Finasteride, which is what all these cis men that are balding are taking is the same thing that trans femmes are taking because it's an anti-androgen. Like, do they realize that they're pursuing gender-affirming care? I don't know. Maybe we should tell them. Same thing with hair transplants, because a lot of cisgender men will pursue hair transplants, but so will trans people. Do you see how the procedure itself is not the issue, but it somehow becomes the issue when transgender people are pursuing it as gender-affirming care? And do you also see how this is gender-affirming care no matter whether you're cis or trans? Ask cis people why they're doing these things. It's usually to curb an insecurity or because it makes them feel more like themselves, or they just plain want to, which is the same reason that trans people do it. Political discourse around gender-affirming surgery has nothing to do with the actual medical treatments themselves and everything to do with policing and controlling people's bodies. If you're cis, show up to one of these anti-trans bill hearings and tell them how you have pursued gender-affirming care, if indeed you have. The more cis allies talk about how they pursue the same things, the more it gets destigmatized for trans people, and the greater potential for access we'll get. Keep fighting for bodily autonomy. I love you. Bye!
Where do non-binary people come from? Dunno. It all starts in Mesopotamia.
When was that?
2000 BC.
2000 BC?
This civilization was the earliest records of humanity. There are references to types of people who are neither male or female, and the records describe how God created these people, their roles in society, and words for different kinds of them. At the same time, let's skip over to ancient Egypt, shall we? Who also described 3 genders: male, female, and Sekhet. Let's spin the globe one more time, shall we? And we'll go to Southern Asia.
Is this around the same sort of time?
This was actually a little bit later. This was around 400 BC. There are the earliest records of the Hijra people. The Hijra consider themselves to be neither male or female.
As a whole entire civilization?
Yeah, and they still exist, the Hijra people, although oppressed they are. Next, we have 7th century BC. These are my favourites. The Scythians, who were Eurasian nomadic horse riders. Who apparently...
You're making this up.
Who apparently honoured gender non-conforming people as priests and warriors. They apparently also invented the earliest known hormone therapy using licorice root.
Wow, just get me licorice root out.
Pre-colonial Native Americans, let's spin that bloody globe again, shall we? Who historically recognised various kinds of genders that all fall under the umbrella of Two-Spirit, which just encompasses the different kinds of genders that they had in the communities that don't fit in the Western gender binary. Now, post-Christ, 1st century, the year 100, there are records stating that classical Judaism actually recognised 6 genders. I can't tell you more information about that because I don't know it. Anglo-Saxon, when did they start recognising non-binary people? The roots of you and I, the British. Because in the 11th century, there was a word found called weapon withestra, which meant woman with a weapon, which also people believed to be woman with a penis, and may have been a word used to describe queer, intersex, non-binary folk back in the 11th century of Britain.
So it's not a new thing at all.
It's ancient. It's ancient, baby. It goes as far back as time as we know.
My name is Rabbi Daniel Bogard. I'm a rabbi at Central Reform Congregation, one of the largest Jewish communities here in the state of Missouri. And I'm here because I have a trans kid. Because the first thing you learn when you love a trans kid in the state of Missouri is that you have to protect them from their government. Jews have a long history of looking at gender very differently than many of our Christian neighbors do, as we heard from the bill sponsor who testified herself that this bill is inspired by her very specific Christian faith. Jews look at this differently. 2,000 years ago, we have texts about there being 6, 7, 8 different genders. We have traditions that suggest that Abraham and Sarah were intersex, that the very first human beings were created not as Adam and Eve, but as Adam and Eve, as one combined intersex being. In the 1930s, in what we've now come to call the Nazi Olympics, it turns out that a whole bunch of athletes were going off and competing in these games, in the women's games, and coming back as men. There was an uproar in the American press, but I don't know about you, I had never heard about this because we don't teach the history of queer people. In fact, we only know this story because an old Jewish man in Brooklyn wrote in the 1930s in a letter to the editor in Yiddish, telling a story about a Jew who transitioned in the 1800s in Ukraine in the shtetl and was accepted and embraced and married off to Rachel and was treated like a human being.
Please finish your thought.
If we don't teach queer history, if we don't teach that there have always been trans people, then every time in every generation it seems new and scary, and we are setting our kids up for narrow, bigoted, tiny tiny lives and not giving them the education that every Missouri child deserves. Thank you.
Any question for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Drag queen Bridget Bandit testifies at the Texas State Capitol.
Good afternoon to the chair and committee. My name is Bridget Bandit, and I'm speaking in opposition to SB 12 and SB 1601, which might be obvious. I was born and raised here in Austin, Texas. I grew up in Northwest Austin, where my first job at 15 was teaching summer art camps to elementary school students. I've also worked at the Northwest Austin YMCA as a swim instructor, teaching mostly 3 to 5-year-olds life-saving skills. I've also worked at the Main Event, hosting children's birthday parties, and volunteering in my church as a youth group leader. I graduated from Texas State with a degree in psychology, during which I took multiple classes on human growth and development. Today, I am a full-time drag queen right here in Austin, where I occasionally hold drag queen story times. These kinds of events don't differ much from the kind of work I did before, yet these laws would impact my ability to work with children simply because of how I am presenting and not actually what I am presenting. These bills discriminate against people based on sex and not the actual content of performances. The only reason this bill would affect me is that most people assume I am male under this costume, and I receive the same kind of treatment as any other drag queen. However, the bill would not directly affect me with the way it currently defines drag, as I am someone who is born female and does drag as a feminine person. Why should I be able to continue the same kinds of events with similar content and costumes, but not my male counterparts? This bill should be more concerned about the content of the performances rather than the sex or gender of the performers. We do want to continue our events like drag story times that are intentionally modified to be appropriate for children. Drag is simply a form of art, and like any form of art, it can be produced by many different kinds of people and be modified for different kinds of audiences. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your testimony.
And I just want to ask a simple question. Why can't we leave trans people alone? Let them be who they are. Let them live their lives. Let's stop discriminating against them simply because they are different from who we are and different than what we understand. Just because we don't understand it doesn't mean we shouldn't support the transgender community and love them in the same way we should love all human beings. They're not bothering anyone. They want to go to school. They want to play sports. They want to hang out with their friends. They want to live their lives. Let them live their lives. We have an ugly history of discriminating against people who are different than we are throughout our time in this country. Whether they are Black, Latino, Asian, LGBTQ, poor, people with disabilities, women. We have an ugly history of discrimination in this country. And now the trans community is the target. All they want to do is live their lives. Why are Republicans so uncomfortable with this? Let them be who they are. That's it. They're not bothering you. They're not taking your lunch money. They're not criminalizing your communities. They're not engaging in gun violence. They just want to live and be happy like everyone else. And they are contributing members to society, whether it's through education, sports, the economy, or anything else. What the heck who are we as Americans and as a human race to be so darn uncomfortable with an individual or group of people that's different from who we are? From the beginning of American history, as we got our stuff together, as we tried to, we invited people from all over the world to help us build the nation that we have now. And we continue to try to evolve into the nation that we're capable of being. And no one should be left out of that, especially not the trans community, which is the most vulnerable community right now in our country. I just want my Republican colleagues to just take a breath, stop, relax. The trans community isn't bothering you. Let them live. Just like you want your friends and family to live and have freedom and have rights and have choice, let the trans community have the same thing. Thank you, and I yield back.
My mother used to say, if one of my children become a dyke, a bull dyke is what they called them back in that day, I'll kill them. She took me to a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist was like, well, what do you think is wrong? And she said, well, she's just not normal. And I'm sitting there and I'm saying, okay, I am normal.
The raids that went on, just because someone would decide, okay, it's time to go raid this place.
So there was a part of me that wanted to be a traditional gal. I thought that was my right path. I remember early on thinking I would never go into a gay bar.
What's most painful was how I reacted to other homosexuals, other people, non-heterosexuals. I was very mean, because if I joined the other side of the team, then I'm safe.
And my job was to give people who were gay discharges, undesirable discharges, because they weren't fit for service.
I thought if I got married and had a baby, I would be okay. Then I wouldn't have to tell my mother that I like girls. I wouldn't have to tell anyone that I like girls. I would be the norm.
At that point, my mother was, of course, mortified. And she just decided that the best thing to do to cure, so-called cure, was to get married. So I got married at 14 years of age.
I was always looking for that partner in someone else. Never found him. Never found them. I've never had a lover. I've never had a partner. I've observed that happening to lots of gay people in their lives when they give up.
I would recommend saying 10 times a day, this is me, and it's okay, and I really like me.
I think I lost a lot of years not being myself.
For the rest of my life, if nothing else happens, wow, this is me.
All right, can you just give me your name and why you're qualified to talk about this, please?
My name is Catherine. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Biology. I have 2 master's degrees, one in biobehavioral health, one in public health. I'm a PhD student who works with infectious diseases and medical microbiology. Before that, I specialized in developmental biology and genomics.
So in your medical experience and with your medical understanding, is being trans a mental illness?
Definitively no.
Thank you. Can you give us any scientific evidence that you might have?
There's actually a couple different types of scientific evidence we can look into here. One is what occurs naturally in nature. Another is in terms of genomics and genes, and both are very pervasive. In terms of natures, lizards, birds, fish, beetles, even some cat species like lions exhibit transgender behaviors naturally. And then in terms of genomics, 21 variants in 19 genes have been found in estrogen signaling pathways of the brain, which are critical to establishing whether the brain is masculine or feminine. These variants mean that in boys who the birth sex is male, this critical estrogen exposure, if it doesn't happen, that means their brain does not get masculinized, and they are actually, in essence, females. Their brains are females, genetically. And in natal females, that means people who were born as females. If they don't have that estrogen exposure, it leads to masculinization of their brain, which means that they themselves are men. So science is showing us that your brain, how it develops, will give you what gender your brain is, and that may not match the gender that your physical body is. In addition, 5 research institutions right now, including Vanderbilt, George Washington University, and Boston's Children's Hospital, are all looking into the genomes of a person's complete set of DNA for clues about why transgender people are born in this way. there is so much evidence that is in the woodworks ready to come out to explain how we interpret and experience gender.
Thank you very much for your input.
You're very welcome. And may I just say that if we're looking in terms of mental illness, somebody who denies scientific fact to make their own narrative sound better.
Yeah, you shouldn't just call on mental illness whenever it's convenient, but thank you for your input.
Hi, my name is Wes Staley, Wesstaley. When LB 371 was first introduced back in January, I laughed. It felt like a joke. The language and intent of the bill is so cartoonishly unconstitutional in direct violation of First Amendment rights that I thought, surely there is no way that this will go anywhere. Surely it won't even reach committee. Yet here we are 2 months later with over 425 anti-trans and anti-drag bills in legislatures in nearly every state in this country. Many of those bills have been passing into law. I am part of the LGBTQ plus community. I am part of the trans community. Many years ago, I was a drag performer. Drag performance gave me an opportunity to express not only my love of theater and the stage, but also to explore my own gender expression and identity through clothing, excessive makeup, and other artificial physical markers, to quote the condescending language of this bill and proposed amendment. Now, let me be clear. Not every drag performer is trans, nor does every trans person perform in drag. Drag is theater. Being trans is an unshakable core aspect of who you are. But there are overlaps in the community, and bills such as this certainly will be used to criminalize trans people for existing because many people outside our community do not understand the difference. The goal of this bill and others like it, i.e. LBs 574 and 575, are all one in the same, that for the good of society, transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely, the whole preposterous ideology at every level. That is a direct quote from Michael Knowles at the Conservative Political Action Conference earlier this month, said on camera, on a stage, in front of an audience, and was met with enthusiastic applause. Members of the committee, when I tell you that we are at the precipice of genocide in this country, I do not exaggerate. I am not being dramatic. The legislative assault on my community's rights across this country is not about protecting children. It is not about protecting women in sports. It is about one thing and one thing only: the systematic destruction of an entire group of people, the eradication of us from public life. Genocide does not happen overnight. It is a slow boil, and we are currently at a very distressing simmer. I ask each of you to think very seriously and very hard about who you are as a person. What do you want to contribute to Nebraska's history, to this country's history? What do you want your legacy to be within your own family's future generations? Do you want to make people proud for standing up for what's right and helping an extremely vulnerable community who are in life-threatening danger? Or do you want to add to the stain of this country's history of hate and oppression and be someone your grandchildren don't like to talk about? The queer community has survived dark times before, and we will survive dark times again, but I implore you to make the right decision, be on the right side of history, oppose LB 371. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee?
States are calling for transgenocide. We are in stage 7 of genocide.
Stage 7? Hold on, wait. I had to go to Google and do some digging to find out that there are even stages of genocide. Okay, yes, people, stages. In fact, there are 10. And she said we're in the 7th one? We already did this one, right? Stage 1, classification. And if anyone should know better, it's people of color about classification. This is why I was not finna jump on that transphobia woo train, because stage 1 is classification. Anytime you can't be cool with someone being themselves, you consider them, and you, us, it's a problem. Excluding people who are perceived to be different. We know about that. Stage 2, symbolization. Pause and read. Does that sound familiar? Now let's get to stage 3. Woo, the big one. Not really, because it gets worse. Uh-oh. Start saying who can do what, huh? Who can marry who, huh? Stage 4, those perceived as different, are treated with no form of human rights or personal dignity. Organization. And what political party or organization could be targeting trans or black folks? Usually targets everyone. And definitely not saying that the other one's better, just an FYI. And I just wanted to point out, because we're only at stage 5, that every step, every stage has been an opportunity for the people to say something or stop it. So we've let it get past this point. Polarization. The propaganda stage. That's where that whole cis movement got its real thing from, eh? This should be the most obvious stage to me. Been noticed it pretty much my whole life, at least for me and my people. And keep in mind, if there's room to make propaganda, that means it was planned, right? The organization. Newspapers and news outlets, like, y'all not picking that up? Well, here we are, stage 7. Us, right now. Perpetrators plan the genocide. They use euphemisms such as those phrases. They even go on to use ideals to cloak their intentions under the guise of good morals, Christianity. And they get you super paranoid, like, oh no, you're children, when they could really give a fuck. Like, wasn't there just a school shooting yesterday? Stage 8, persecution. Pause and read. And let's not act like we haven't been here in history before. Be fucking for real with yourself right now. Oh, racism isn't real. That's not real. That's not real.
I've been reading a book called Transgender History by Susan Stryker, and there's a letter in it written by one of our transgender ancestors named Jenny in 1909, and I would like to read it to you. I was born in 1862. I did not want any trousers and put up such a fuss, and since my sister was 1 year older, I could wear her clothes until mother died in 1868. My aunts then forced me to wear boys' clothing. I clearly remember that I only wanted to be a girl, and my relatives and acquaintances would tease me. I wanted to go to the teacher's seminary because later I thought when I finished I could go around as a governess or as children's teacher. Even at the time I had firm plans to become a woman. When I saw that they were not going to allow me to study to be a teacher, at the first opportunity I stole from a girl who was my size. I put on her things and took her certificate of domicile and burned my boys' things that night. Everything boyish I left behind and went to Switzerland, where my relatives would not know where I was. I first went to work as a nanny and did general housework. At the same time I learned embroidery. I grew strong and not ugly, so the boys would lie in wait for me. At that time I felt fully a young woman, except when the fellows got fresh with me, and it would occur to me that unfortunately I was not one. At 16 and a half, a man tried to... me. I protected myself, but he gave me a bad name as being a hermaphrodite, so I had to move away and went to France. I had a friendship with a girl who, like me, was in opposition to her sex, namely manly, and when she went to St. Quentin to the embroidery factory there, I followed her. There I had the opportunity for the first time to come together with women who, with other women, lived like married people. In 1882, I left France and went to New York. Here I soon found work as a maid on a farm because I thought I would be able to live there inconspicuously. But one day the farmer's wife was away and he became fresh. I was afraid of discovery and left that place and got a good job in Jersey City. I became acquainted with an embroiderer who found out I was no young woman. He threatened to call the police and tell them I was playing a masquerade. He forced me into... and a few months passed, during which I got more miserable each day. One morning I packed everything together and, when he was away, sold everything of worth. I went to Montana as a woman cook. There, however, betrayed again, I took myself to San Francisco in 1885 and still live there today. I am now 47 years old, and today it is still my deepest wish to wear a new princess dress, a new flowered hat, and lace petticoats. I decorate my bedroom in the manner of women, and a man seldom enters my room because I am no friend to men. Conversations with women satisfy me more, and I am envious of educated women because I look up to them. For that reason, I have always been an activist for equal rights. We have always been here, and no matter when or where or what obstacles we face, we always find a way to bring joy to our lives and to live truly to ourselves. That will never change, no matter what happens.
The Council for National Policy is the scariest Christian nationalist group you've never heard of. Buckle the fuck up. For over a year now, I've been investigating who is behind all of the anti-trans, anti-LGBTQ+, anti-women, anti-BIPOC bills and laws that are being passed in this country. And I've told you about the Alliance Defending Freedom, the ADF, who is behind a lot of the bills. But if they are a henchman, the Council for National Policy is the fucking mob boss. Let me tell you about them. The New York Times describes the CNP as a little-known club of a few hundred of the most powerful conservatives in the country who meet 3 times a year behind closed doors at undisclosed locations for a confidential conference. They are so secretive that you can only attend with the unanimous approval of executive committee, and members are instructed to not even refer to the organization by name like it's fucking Fight Club. And because reality is stranger than fiction, they were founded in 1981 by the author of the Left Behind series, Tim LaHaye. To tell you more about them, we need to go back in the past. We have to go all the way back to 1845 when the Southern Baptist Convention was started. The Southern Baptists were created because they branched away from Baptists over slavery. Southern Baptists supported slavery. The Southern Baptist Convention remained apart from other Protestant denominations during the war, and in 1962, the Supreme Court ended public school prayer. Now they are mad. It's at this time that the Southern Baptists realized that with the shifting demographic of America, that they might be irrelevant very soon. They could not have it that way. So the Southern Baptist Church plotted to get into politics. And in 1979, Southern Baptist preacher Jerry Falwell, who was for segregation, he was vehemently opposed to racial integration in academy, he decided to convene a meeting with some other pastors as well as Republican operative Paul Weyrich, who co-founded the Heritage Foundation, and Falwell, Weyrich, Pat Robinson, Tim LaHaye, the author of the frickin' Left Behind series, and presidential Ronald Reagan got together. They started a little 501c3 organization called the Council for National Policy, which is now a network of evangelicals, oil barons, gun lobbyists, and Republican operatives working to dismantle the social safety net and civil liberties that we have today. And some of its more prominent members today include the Koch brothers and the DeVos family. Leaders of this group have included Tony Perkins, the head of the LGBT-bashing Family Research Council, who was vice president for a year and is still on its board of governors. Tony Perkins, who once claimed that gay people recruit children and secretly published a mailing list for a candidate he was managing from former Klan leader David Duke. Also on the CNP's board of governors is Michael Perotka. Perotka was for many years on the board of the League of the South, a neo-Confederate hate group that advocates for a newly secluded South ruled by white people. Another board member is Matt Staver, leader of the Anti-LGBT Liberty Council, who has worked for the recriminalization of homosexuality and calls the Boy Scouts a playground for child abusers. He likened LGBT activists to terrorists. And there's Alan Sears, the founder of, oh look, Alliance Defending Freedom, the AD-fucking-F. The entire group seeks a fusion of fundamentalist theology with American civic life. They believe that this country was founded for Christians like them, generally natural-born citizens and white. This group owns media outlets. You might recognize this CNP member, Charlie Kirk, who runs something called Turning Point USA. The Daily Caller is also owned by members of the Council for National Policy, and so is Breitbart. Guess what other organization is a part of the CNP? The fucking National Rifle Association, the NRA. The Seven Mountains Mandates, ADF, Moms of Liberty, ALEC, they are all arms of this fucking monster, the CNP. They backed Ted Cruz on his presidential run because his dad, Rafael Cruz, was one of the founding fucking members. Amy Coney Barrett, Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, Ted Cruz, they've all been speakers at CNP conferences. You know, those secret conferences that they're not even allowed to say the dang name of or even disclose where they're having it. Yeah. All this time, the Republicans talking about how there's a shadowy government. It was them all the fucking time. The CNP, the Council for National Policy. Remember that name. Notice it when it pops up in articles or on news stations, because that is the organization that is behind all of the shit that is trying to turn America into a white supremacist, Christian nationalist, fascist shithole. The CNP.